Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this AOS SAC webinar series event, Careers Beyond Academia. It's great to see so many people, and I know that a lot of people are going to be referring to this recording after the event ends because they couldn't make it in person, or at this time virtually. So thank you so much to our panelists for being here to share their knowledge with us. Before we get started, I wanted to make a few announcements. First off, I wanted to thank all of the members of the webinar series committee and other facilitators that we have with us today. So those members of the webinar series committee are Mena Handmaker, Teresa Pagan, and Jacob Drucker. And we also have two members or two facilitators here with us today who actually helped to run the in-person version of this event at the AOS BC conference this summer. And those two people are Colleen Miller and Jen Houts. And so thank you so much to them for being here and acting as facilitators for our breakout rooms later. So before we get started with our event, I also did want to mention that the webinar series subcommittee of the Student Affairs Committee is recruiting new membership. So if you have exciting ideas for new webinars that you want to see us put on in the next year, or you want to kind of help with the behind the scenes work to make these webinars happen, please fill out the form that Mena is going to be dropping in the chat shortly. And give us a little bit of information about what you'd like to do as a member of the committee, as we are, yes, recruiting new members. Okay. So I think with that, we'll get started with our event here. So the event will be structured such that the first 45 minutes or so here, we're going to have a panel where our panelists will answer some of your pre-submitted questions. Please, as the panel is occurring, feel free to drop any other questions that you have in the chat, and we'll address them as they come up. And then for the last 30 minutes or so of the event, we'll move into breakout rooms. So you'll be able to choose a breakout room to go into to talk to some of our panelists more one-on-one. So we'll get to that aspect of the event later on. So to get started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and then say a little bit about the current job that they're in and how they got into that job, that job that they're currently in. So let's get started with our first panelist, David LaPuma. So David, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hey, everybody. So my name is David LaPuma. I'm the Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Customer Support at Cellular Tracking Technologies. We're a telemetry company in Cape May, New Jersey, who make telemetry devices for tracking wildlife. Everything from working on hummingbird tags all the way up to golden eagles. And so the way I got into my position, actually prior to this position, I was the director of the Cape May Bird Observatory here in Cape May as well. And in that position, I was in charge of running a nonprofit, right? So in that role, I like to say I was selling conservation. So I was trying to get people, really interested in supporting the research and educational work that the Bird Observatory was doing. And now I'm trying to get people interested in using certain technologies to study the species that they're interested in studying. So it wasn't a huge jump, a huge transition. The company I work for is very unique also. It's really made up of biologists and engineers who kind of, as a company, we really take a nonprofit model approach where we have a mission when it's not just a financial bottom line. And so we support a lot of research. We were out tagging raptors last week, all week, putting the next generation of tiny transmitters on sharp-shinned hawks and Cooper's hawks and things like that. So as someone who comes from academia and loved the research side of things and loved connecting people to nature, it wasn't a big stretch for me to jump into a role where I'm actually doing more sales and cultivating accounts. Yeah, and so you can, if you looked at our staff on our website, you'll also see that's kind of trickled through the whole staff. Like a lot of the staff, it has some experience in field research. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks, David. So let's have Melissa go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Murillo, and I'm the field coordinator for the Peregrine Fund's Puerto Rican Sharp-shinned Hawk Conservation Project in Puerto Rico. I've kind of just got into wildlife conservation right out of grad school and kind of stayed in it. I've been through multiple field jobs throughout my career, through multiple states, working with like state agencies, a variety of nonprofits, universities, even served as an AmeriCorps member on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Center. And yeah, so it's just definitely taken me all over the country. And that's how I got to my position right now. I fell in love with the world of raptors and conservation and just kind of ended up in the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. I kind of spend my time here in Boise, where our base is, our headquarters is based at. But yeah, I kind of bounce back and forth from the mainland to the island and help recover this critically endangered raptor on the island of Puerto Rico.
Cool, thank you, Melissa. Jess, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's really fun to be a part of something like this. And I wish when I was an undergrad looking for jobs that I had this available to me and I had some knowledge of where to go. So I am Jess. I'm an ecologist at the United States Geological Survey based in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I'm at the Fort Science Center is what we call ourselves here. And my route to getting to this job was a little unconventional. I spent time working in between each of my degrees. So I was a little bit older when I started my PhD work. And then I graduated with my PhD in ecology 10 days before I had my first baby. So that was an adventure at the age of 35. And then after that, I worked part-time before pursuing a postdoc position at Colorado State, which ended up, because of some politics with moving money around, they ended up shifting all of that money to the USGS. And I went with a number of other people and was fortunate enough to get into a term position here with the federal government. My job focus is primarily I'm primarily focused on developing tools for land managers to help them more effectively manage so conservation or restoration practices within sagebrush habitats to help conserve species that are dependent on those habitats. So the big one is sage grouse, but there are a lot of songbirds that are in very precipitous decline, as well as some mammals like the pygmy rabbit. So that's sort of what I do. And if you especially for the people who either have families or want families, or the women in the group, I think I'm really glad to be here to kind of represent that you can be a working mom in a professional career with young kids. So I look forward to talking to you guys.
Great, thanks so much, Jess. And let's finish our panelist introductions with Evan.
Hi, thanks. And thanks for inviting me. So I'm Evan Adams. I lead up the Quantitative Wildlife Ecology Research Lab at the Biodiversity Research Institute. We're a nonprofit and we focus on wildlife research and most of our work is kind of on the more applied side of things, but we are focused on often trying to improve decision-making processes, either with data or with stakeholder engagement or a variety of things. I got into this position through my work in my PhD. So I was up at the University of Maine working on my PhD, and I started helping out BRI with some kind of field projects. I was doing a bunch of songbird banding, and I ended up pulling in the executive director of BRI onto my dissertation committee at some point. And we just kind of kept working on new projects, new ideas. And so when they needed some additional when they were thinking about hiring folks, I came to mind and applied and eventually got the position. I wasn't doing the quantitative ecology thing from the jump there. I was initially starting to do songbird stuff, but I over time was able to mold the position into the thing that I'm doing today, through sort of getting new projects and continuing to work with collaborators and do all kinds of fun stuff. So that's how I got to where I am.
Great, thank you. So we're going to start with a category of questions around how to actually search out these types of jobs. So one of our pre-submitted questions was, where is the best location to find non-academic job postings? And the person who asked this question mentioned that the sites that they go on are often inundated with applicants for only a few roles. So they're wondering if there were better ways to search out open positions.
I'm happy to take the first stab at that, Jenny, and then maybe others can jump in and fill in where I have holes. So I know, you know, when I was looking for jobs, I would really focus on some of the job boards that it was AOU at the time. I assume AOS still has a job board that they manage. Also, Texas A&M University has a really big job board that a lot of people are posting on. And if you're interested in federal jobs, the best thing that you can do is go to the USA Jobs website and get yourself, you can do some searches and then save those searches. And whenever something comes open, USA Jobs will email you what the job is. And so it's that's a really good resource if you're looking for federal jobs in particular. And then any place that you think you want to work, go to their website. And oftentimes, like state departments and things will have job board mailing lists that you can get on, so you can get notifications when a job is going to be posted.
Yeah, I mean, I can only kind of speak to what we do. When we post a new job, we kind of go at it in a couple different ways. First, we put it on our website so that that's available. That's probably like the lowest traffic place you can put a job announcement, but like we do it for posterity's sake. I mean, this is for science positions specifically, but and then you put them on Texas A&M because that is one of the things that gets you the most reach. You might be, sometimes I do non-bird work, and so we're trying to get people outside of like the bird or the wildlife ecology world. We're working with, we have some new collaborators working on marine mammal work, and so then we kind of go to some different types of job boards for that sometimes. And then I usually put something on Ornithology Exchange, which I dumped into the chat just now. People aren't aware somehow. Ornithology Exchange, that's a good space too. I think increasingly, I mean, and then additionally, I'm usually sending out job announcements either on my Twitter or to whatever, whatever sort of relevant forum or kind of larger kind of email group that I'm a part of, so that people can share it around that by word of mouth. That's actually probably one of the better ways to get good candidates is the word of mouth spreading. So if you know somebody who you think would be good, or you know somebody who's doing work similar to you, you often want to contact them and say, do you have anyone in mind here that would be good for us? And that can be a really good way to get great candidates. So I think from an application standpoint, I think, you know, but all those jobs also go to Texas A&M, and we review everybody, and we sort of take everyone equally seriously. But I would say good ways to do it is to start getting well connected with people who are doing jobs that you're interested in, and making sure that you are like getting these announcements and getting them early so you can plan. But also, I'm not really aware of anybody who's not posting science jobs to like Texas A&M and things like that. That's I mean, it's a bit of a clearinghouse, but they are all there.
Yeah, I'll kind of just echo the stuff that Jess and Evan were saying. Those places are the places that I searched when I was looking for jobs coming up. I would say, again, if there's a place that you think is really fascinating to you that you might be interested in, reach out to them and find out what their policy is on applying for jobs. It's interesting being on the inside of some of these places where little idiosyncrasies that you wouldn't think are important become very important. You've got people that are in charge of hiring who don't want things emailed, or only want things emailed, or want everything in a PDF format. And those things can make or break in a first cut. So I would just reach out and say, hey, you know, I'm really interested. What are your requirements? How should I best go about making this application? And Jess probably knows the secrets way better than I do, because I applied for some federal jobs and never got them. But the whole federal job process, you know, going through a whole KSA and understanding what those knowledge skills, and I don't even know what the A stands for, knowing what those are and how to hit those correctly will help get you past that first cut. Oftentimes, the person that's going to be hiring you that you want to really talk to isn't even in that first cut process. So any tips you can learn from folks that have gone through that gauntlet are going to pay dividends for you, at least getting your foot in the door.
I know Melissa probably wants to talk too, but just since you said that, David, if anyone in the group is interested in federal jobs that involves applying through USA Jobs, come to the breakout room and I can give you guys some tips on how to manage that, because as Evan said, you know, most people are posting on the Texas A&M job site. I think that's everybody except for the federal government. We don't typically do that, but I'm part of a DEIA group that's I'm working with the retention team, or the recruitment and retention team, trying to figure out how to get more people and get the word out that we have jobs. So I will stop there. I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, I don't have much to contribute after everybody's kind of already said what we had to say. Yes, the federal government jobs are definitely frustrating. Still encourage you all to keep at it, keep applying. You really have to hit those keywords. I've applied to a few federal jobs and yeah, had the same problem. So just keep at it. Even though those big sites like Texas A&M, Ornithology Exchange, with Ornithology Exchange, you can see how many people view that posting. So just don't be intimidated by those numbers. We actually really do look at your resume. So just kind of giving you a little bit of encouragement for that. But yeah, kind of all in the same thing. It also doesn't hurt to, if you go to these like AOS conferences and run into people you want to work with, just get their business card, email them. Be in contact with individuals if you are really interested in the project. I get emails from interested candidates throughout the whole year, and I get back to people and just kind of tell them when I'm putting up our job posting, so you can just be on our mailing list. And yeah, it's nice to just shoot your shot.
Great, thank you, everybody. That was a lot of excellent information. Okay, so I think we're going to move on. That was a great transition, Melissa. We're going to move on to our section talking about how to actually get a job. So we had a lot of questions related to application materials. And one common question was how to strengthen your CV for a job outside of academia. We also had a question about transitioning a CV into a resume. So like what types of things should you highlight if you need to make your CV shorter for a non-academic job posting?
I guess since I'm in the non-academic group, I'll I'll throw in something about that. So really, it comes down to the job you're applying for, right? Like there's going to be, like every job's going to be different. Like when I got the job at the KMA Bird Observatory as the director, I had very little managerial experience up until the job right before that. I was doing academic stuff. So the only thing the only time I could say I managed a budget was managing a grant budget. And I hadn't managed people except I had mentored some students. But in the year before that job, I worked for Leica on a kind of a whim, and the optics company. And I built this birding team, the Leica kind of ambassador team. And so I managed people, and I managed a much bigger budget. And all of those things I didn't know at the time, but all of those things ended up being really critical for me to get a job at the Bird Observatory. Even though the academic experience you would think would hold a lot, it was those little things that kind of rounded out the position that really a lot of folks looked at when they decided, okay, between candidate A or candidate B. So really, thinking about how you can, based on the job that you really want to target, find those skills that are important for those jobs and then highlight those things. If it's a non-academic job, highlight your top papers that, the really impactful stuff or the most recent stuff, make sure that's on there so they know that you're doing that good work. But then maybe make sure you're spending some time describing all of the other things that are appropriate for that job that every other person who doesn't have an academic background is going to be highlighting. And that's a little ambiguous. It's not so specific, but really thinking about rounding that out and maybe talking to other people in those similar kind of positions. I also highly recommend getting, like when you're going to do an interview, finding a diverse group of friends who have experiences in maybe in that sphere to be on a mock committee and they'll do a mock interview. And I did that, and that was hugely impactful. It really helped me see deficiencies that I had my blinders on, allowed me to focus on those things and then you're among friends, so you have an opportunity to kind of get that stuff out in the open before you go into these people that you really don't know that are going to be interviewing you. I'll stop there. I can talk forever, so I'll stop.
Me too, David. Evan, did you want to say something?
Why don't you go for it? The federal stuff could take hours.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep my toe out of the federal pool just for the sake of the broader group too. But I want to just really emphasize the importance of your cover letter as well, because that is where that's going to be some hiring person's first exposure to you. I mean, they are going to look at your bulleted list in your resume, and that's important to have that organized and pared down. But your cover letter is where they're going to learn about you, and you are so important in the interview process. And the application process, just having people learn who it is that they would be working with. So that's your opportunity to express what your passions are for the job that you want to be doing. And I know when I apply for things, and I still keep copies of all of my cover letters that I've submitted, because I'll take maybe the one that I thought was the best, and then I'll really customize it to the specific job I'm applying for. So it is a lot of work to put together the application materials, but really try to focus on that cover letter and just customize everything for the specific job.
Yeah, I guess I would say that in this, at least for me, when we have hired, like I don't think it's like very different from hiring in the academic space. Like I just do, because we're focused on research to such a degree. I think a lot of the same advice would probably apply. I think everything people have said thus far is accurate. I think you just need to be really aware of what job you're applying for, and think about like what parts of your experiences as a researcher, in my case, or potentially in other spheres from other people, what's going to like communicate to me that you will have like the skills necessary to do the position, right? And that comes through the cover letter, that also comes through the resume. So I don't know. I don't think there's like a whole magic trick for this in like the nonprofit space. I do think it's, if you send me a 15-page CV, like I'm probably going to miss some stuff. So I would say like highlight the really cool stuff that you want me to see, and so that we can go from there. So I would be targeted. I don't think you don't get bonus points for having like a really long CV in my world. I want to just see the things you've done and have it be very clearly laid out to me, like how you connect to this project that I'm hiring for. So yeah, sorry, I'm not sure there's anything like super specific here, but I think the good news is some of the same things you've learned already are still very applicable.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually want to echo Jess. The cover letter is really important to me as a field coordinator, and I'm also a boots on the ground biologist, and I will work with the people who I hire. So I want to know who you are. So I like people's authentic self to be expressed in a cover letter, and especially in an interview, because I've had candidates that have, are interviewed a certain way and they look great on paper, and they are a totally different person in the field. And my field season is 6 to 7 months long. So I do not want to be with that kind of person, or like, for that entire time. So it definitely helps if you're interested and express all that. Yeah, if you can, I don't mind long CVs and resumes, if you can kind of express all that. A lot of field biologists do have a ton of field experiences, like seasonal stuff kind of adds up really quickly. So you don't need like one of those super long federal resumes. But if you just concise it and highlight some of your accomplishments, even include some hobbies just to get to know you a little bit better, that would be perfect.
Great, thank you, everybody. So again, that was a great transition, Melissa. So we had a pre-submitted question asking specifically about interviews. What interview tips do you have, and what types of colleagues are you looking for?
Well, I can try this one to start. I think interviewing is very challenging. I think David already gave some good advice on practicing interviews, and that I would second. I think when you are thinking about an interview, you want to be trying to put yourself in the interviewer's shoes as much as possible and thinking about what they want and what they're hoping to get out of this. Now, to some degree, that's relying on them to be clearly communicating with you what they want out of this, but I think trying to think about it from their perspective is really important, and trying to make sure that you are putting your knowledge and skills and personality and like who you are like out there in a very like clear way. I think, let's see, I don't know, there's a lot about interviews that you could talk about, I suppose. I don't know, it's really interesting process. I think one thing that like people need to be like very aware of is that like, at least for me, and I think for a lot of others, like the interview process is very standardized. So you're getting a set of questions that has been set for everybody. And and that is so that I can, and the panel can sort of look at everyone in like a relatively equal way, which is hard to do. But you are often getting a very standardized set of questions towards you. And so you need to think about, so you are going to be kind of compared in like a per question way whenever that is relevant. And so I think ways that you can be, try to sort of set yourself apart, thinking about like, being very aware that you're going to like that's how like the comparison process works, I guess, and trying to be like very clear about like about your answers without answering too long, which I'm answering here. This is definitely too long. Try to be very concise, try to be very effective, and get your point across as quickly as you can. Also, I think like try to have a little bit of fun with it. Like interviews are kind of entertaining. You got to meet people for the first time. It's hard not to like be so nervous. But like recognize that like the other people kind of want to get to know you a little bit, and like that's what like a good percentage of it is trying to just get a sense of what kind of person you are. And it's hard, I know. It's like it's really easy to get all wound up about stuff, at least for me. But it is, I think, really important to give people a sense of who you are as a person, and kind of enjoy the fact that you get to do it a little bit. So I don't know.
I guess my these have been great suggestions and recommendations, by the way, so far. But I think my suggestion really kind of highlights some of the things that other people said, that they want to learn who you are in the interview process, and they want to know what your skills are, but how you're going to really push forward the position that you're in. So you could look at the job posting and think about how you would be contributing to that so that you're ready. And I know that a lot of places are starting to ask questions about diversity, equity, inclusion too. How would you contribute to DEIA in this organization? Probably not every organization is doing that, but I know there's a big push to do that. And I know some of that is happening in the federal government when you start to look for jobs too. And I think for me, the best thing that has helped me along the way with interviews is just knowing that the people that you are talking to, they are authorities, but they're going to be your eventual colleagues. And so thinking of them as talking to them as colleagues can kind of help you relax a little bit and know that if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer, and you can say what you do know and focus on what you do know and what you want to learn. Because I know when I came into the position that I'm in right now, I really was not a spatial ecologist, and I was being hired as a spatial ecologist. And so they'll see the skills that you have and just try to speak to how that contributes to whatever the organization, the agency is, and how that will contribute to the job function.
I guess I'll just add, I mean, Melissa kind of hit on it when we were referring to the cover letters. And again, it's been reiterated throughout this is their opportunity to see you in the flesh and actually have a conversation with you and see how you react and see how you interact. Because ultimately, they're probably going to be spending time with you, and people want to hire people that they kind of want to be around, typically, depending on the position. But so really kind of going in there knowing that like they've obviously seen something in you on paper. That's probably a very important thing. Like you are qualified, right? Go in there feeling qualified. You got to that point. The only reason why you're in that room is because they looked at you and they went, this person is good. we could work with them, we think. Let's get to meet them and see if we really can work with them. So then your opportunity there is really to show them that you're somebody that they want to be around. And I think that's important. And I bombed one of my worst experiences ever was a bombed interview. And had I had that advice going into it, it might have been different. So everybody has those. So just go in there with confidence and get to know the people you might be spending time with. And you may learn something about them. You may learn that I really don't want to be around these people. And that interview process is a two-way street.
For sure. One other thing I'd add is to that is when I'm interviewing folks, I'm thinking about what am I going to learn from them often. Like, what are they bringing to the table that I don't know something about, or that I want to know something about? Like, like you can't be all things to all people all the time, right? And so like I am looking to say like, well, how is this going to? And this isn't the only criteria, obviously, but like I'm excited by people that can like teach me things that I can learn from, and like become like just learn more things about ecology, life, whatever. And like that's exciting. And so think about what it is that you're bringing to the table that other people would be excited to learn from you.
Absolutely. I actually really like receiving questions from candidates. Celebrate the fact that you are in this interview process and you made it to this interview round. There's something about you that caught our eyes. So yeah, celebrate that and show your authentic self. But I enjoy hearing about just things that maybe I didn't list in the job description, or just questions that people may have about the project. And so I kind of feed off of enthusiasm from the candidates. So just kind of show up and be excited and be present in the interview and see how it goes.
Thank you, everyone. This has all been fantastic advice. I'm taking notes. All right, so our next question, we're running a little bit short. We had so many good questions pre-submitted, so we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But one question I do want to touch on was a question about skills. So this person asked, what skills are most important to develop to be hired and to be successful in your career path? And this person was also wondering what skills could be developed on the job. Yeah.
I can take the first stab at that. And I think the simple answer to that question is so dependent on the different job and the different organization, nonprofit agency that you want to work at. So I'm not sure that I have a clear answer for that. Obviously when you're applying for a job, they'll put in the job posting the things that they're looking for. And sometimes those are even things like knowledge about stuff like the Endangered Species Act, things that you can do some homework and prep for before a job interview, and that you can learn quickly on the job. But I think it's okay to acknowledge that nobody out there knows everything, and you can speak to how you learn and what you want to learn. That can also be super helpful. But yeah, it depends on the job. But the great thing about our field of work, I think in particular, is you get to pick which direction your career goes in. And so in some ways, you're the one that's actually going to mold those skills, because sometimes you're brought in to work on a project and you might take it in a completely different direction. So yeah, hopefully that's not a super direct answer, but maybe a helpful one.
Yeah, we're kind of in a similar boat in our company, because the company is so young and we've expanded so quickly. We've gone from 13 staff before the pandemic to now 40 as of yesterday. And so it's been super rapid, and while the DNA of the company has always been, whatever, if you're interested in something, we can kind of find a path for that. It's become even more so now because we've expanded, that we really need people that can move around. And so, if you've got a skill that you can offer, and there's a job position with that skill desired, and there's something else about that organization that you really want to do, the fact that you have that skill is going to give you a shoe in to then be able to expand into that. So, always look at your whole toolbox and see what are all the things that I could do. If I really want to do X, but they're offering a job for Y, go in there and say, hey, I can do Y, but I really want to move towards X, and see if that's an opportunity. And we see that a lot. I mean, I can talk for a while on that, but we've got folks that came in here who were assembly techs, who were doing soldering and really wanted to do cloud programming, computer programming, and on their own just worked with some of the cloud programmers in their own time to kind of build up those skills, and now they're transitioning into that department. And so we've got people who came in with zero bird experience but love to be outdoors and are in the sales and marketing side. And that's important to kind of understand the clientele and understand what people are doing in research. And they just dug in and spent the time to kind of learn about it. And now they're making recommendations for study design and things that a PhD would normally be doing. But if you've got the gumption to do it, and you've got a skill that's desired by that organization, then it might take some work on your own time, but there are opportunities to kind of expand and grow and do the things you want to do.
This is a hard question because it's so wide. And yeah, like the nonprofit world, you wear a lot of hats. So every little thing that you'd have done in the past, if you had a customer service job for a winter, you didn't get any field experience, but you worked at, your local coffee shop or like a local store selling clothes. Customer service skills are really applicable, even in science and field conservation. I still have to go and talk to landowners, so that communication skills are really important for me as well, and that you can get that in a variety of fields and jobs. And yeah, and I think academia really prepares you for different field jobs with like identification and just kind of the rigors of the outdoors a little bit, but you could also do that on your own if you enjoy being outdoors a little bit more, go hiking, and you can bird on your own time too. So those kind of things you can strengthen on your own without even having a job. But that's like when you state like your hobbies are like backpacking or hiking or, birding on your own time, that highlights your skill set. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say for that.
Yeah, there's a lot here, and it's hard to say because I could give a couple of examples. I was hiring a postdoc a couple years back for a position that I had like specific needs for, and so like, well, we need to do some multi-species spatial modeling, right? So like that was kind of like not super negotiable. Like they needed to have experience in those areas, or at least enough of those areas that we could like do the work, right? And so that's kind of a hard thing to be like, oh well, you don't really need that, right? But like on the other hand, when you're hiring people, you're often looking, at least I'm often looking for like, how well is this person going to learn? Because what's going to happen the first time isn't always going to, like what we say is going to happen isn't always the thing that's going to happen. And I think finding people who are like good thinkers, good learners, are willing to try new things is challenging. And so so there's some skills that like are a little more fuzzy. And because I do a lot of work in R, I think about this like from like an R base package sort of way. Like, if you're coming to work with me, you definitely need to know how to use R. Like that's kind of like probably like the baseline of what you need to know. And let's say there's like a million different ways you can run like a spatial model in R. If you know 5 of the 100 of them, like even if those aren't the 5 that I typically use, we can probably work on that, right? Like that's something that we can build on. But if you're not doing any work at all in the same fields as I am, then that's probably more of a problem, right? And so I think it's okay. You don't have to be like perfectly aligned for positions, but you do have to show the capacity to sort of grow into certain aspects. And so to David's point about other sort of like non-research or non-science aspects of jobs, I'm not, depending on the position coming in, we were just hiring somebody, and I was not crazy worried about their ability to manage budgets because I can do that for a while, but we do want people who eventually can manage their own projects. And so any kind of experience you have managing any kind of grant budget or anything like that is always really good to hear about, because you're like, oh, okay, this person knows how to do these things. And I'm not going to throw them in the deep end of like how we manage our budgets from day one, but they're going to be able to get there eventually. And so I would say usually the project's title probably tells you specifically what you're going to need to do. And those are probably the skills that are a little bit closer to non-negotiable. And then outside of it, it's a varying degree of like bonus points and kind of showing how well-rounded you are or how the ways that you can sort of grow into the various areas that you aren't perfectly aligned. Because I'll tell you another secret, like no matter, nobody is ever perfectly aligned for a position. There's always like, people are too varied in their research experience. And they're never like exactly lined up. So there's never like one person who has like every skill that you ever wanted to do for a certain position. There's always somebody who has a little bit less, a little bit more, right? And so it's okay. And so you just need to like, for the things that you're a little bit less on, you like help convince people that like you can grow into those areas.
Great, thank you so much, everybody. All right, so we're running up against our first portion of the event, which we'll get started with breakout rooms soon. But one final question before we do. We had a pre-submitted question. This question was, I would love to hear each panelist's perspective on work-life balance in their current position. Yeah.
I could start. Oh, Jess, were you good to go?
Go ahead. I'll jump in after you, David.
All right. We're a small, I kind of told you the size of the company, growing very fast. And so you might be able to imagine that the work-life balance can be a little tough because, you know, it's when you're constantly, you know, at the limits of your company and you're trying to push and push and push. We spend a lot of time, I spent a lot of time working outside of the normal hours. That's okay. That's the position I'm in. I signed on for that. We also, on the flip side of that, we're very cognizant of our employees. And so we make it a point to tell our employees to take time off. It's kind of like do as I say, not as I do in a lot of ways and we try and balance that between hourly employees and salaried employees. So all of this is to say there are probably places that do a better job of work-life balance management, but because of the position we're in right now, we're just, you know, that's just where we're at. Yeah, but it's something you should be able to advocate for in your position. You know, and that's something you should probably discuss going into that before you accept a job. You want to maybe clarify some of those work-life balance issues. Before that, at the Bird Observatory, I probably had less of a work-life balance. I was getting paid less and I was working longer hours because that was just the nature of working for a nonprofit that was a tank of gas from 60 million people and everybody was here on the weekends. So I'll take that with a grain of salt.
So I have been involved in a work-life balance information push within our own lab here at USGS that I started because I was talking to my colleagues and they, you know, they're either struggling with kids or, you know, this or that. And our lab is really progressive and open about discussing things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and work-life balance. And so do a little bit of research on your own and read some things about work-life balance. Because I think, you know, what I've found is through the generations, our grandparents' generation and into our parents' generation, people looked up to you when you worked yourself to death. But the reality is that if you are working so hard that you don't have good emotional and physical health, that you're not going to be performing your best at work. You may be working really long hours and working really hard, but you're not doing your best. And it is so important to take care of yourself and have time for family. There's a book, I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat, that's called Time Management for Mortals. It's 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. I'll find it. I wish I had read this book 20 years ago. So it's just, you know, it's a new perspective on things, but with the work-life balance stuff, you don't have to kill yourself in your job, and you shouldn't be, because you want to enjoy what you're doing and you're going to have a greater impact and you're going to be more productive.
I can definitely echo in both David and Jess. Yeah, burnout. And I feel like depression, anxiety in the field of conservation biology can be very prevalent, and I think people push through it a lot. And I think that's also how we lose a lot of talented folks. So you definitely have to pace yourself. It's hard for me as I've struggled with this as well, but with my position, I really do emphasize on my biologist, my on-the-ground biologist, doing all the hard manual labor to take breaks and have days off. And I've definitely been in jobs where you kind of just crank through the field season and get the job done, do everything you got to do. And it's hard because our field season is a little bit like that, but we do go in waves. So there are leisurely days where you can, take a day off and celebrate somebody's birthday, go to the beach, or like, at least I have the luxury of having a beach nearby on an island. But yeah, so you have to kind of make sure that you take time for yourself as well. And when they do give you a day off, like take the day off. Like, I know sometimes you just want to get all those, you want to go out there and trap. If you're like in the highlight of trapping season, like you want to be out there and grabbing birds and banding, getting that experience. But we also want you to be fresh and rejuvenated enthusiasm and want to keep your energy levels up. So that's also very important for safety of you yourself and for the birds as well. So yeah, just kind of if your supervisor is kind of missing out on that kind of cues, you're more than welcome to talk to your be like, yes, I do need a day off, or please remember that I have this event coming up, and take your time to go do go to your wedding, go to your friend's wedding or anything like that. It is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll second everything people have said thus far. It's hard to take time off. I would say with like the folks that I supervise, I try to have conversations with them about how much they want to work. Like, what is it that you want to do? Everyone has different like thresholds for like work-life balance. And I think like, work isn't always fun, but I think you should be broadly enjoying yourself. Otherwise, there's probably a long-term problem coming down the line, right? Whether it's burnout or whatever, what have you. And if you're not enjoying yourself, then I think it can be really hard to be effective. So I think I try to have conversations with people to say, like, well, what kind of hours do you want to work? And like, what is it that you want to get out of this? And like, I would say, just speaking personally, like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm working 40 hours a week, and then like I'm probably done that week. I'm just not getting any more out of it. I'm not really being effective. I'm not really like having a great time. And there are some times where I could be working way more than that because I'm doing something exciting. I'm just like really engaged with it. And that can be really fun as well. And so I think it's hard. And so sometimes I'm pretty good at being a good model here, and sometimes I'm pretty bad at it, I would say. And sometimes there's just a lot of work to do, and you just got to do it. And so it's a really funny continuum. But like over the long haul, I would say you want to be, as long as you're having fun and working what you want to work, I think that's the key. And finding colleagues, colleagues, supervisors, and other folks who can kind of help you meet those goals, I think are the key there. But it is hard. It's hard to when there's birds to be banded in the field, and they're not waiting for anybody. So I think it is important to sort of take the long view and try to figure out, like, over the last year, how did that go? Did you take as much vacation as you wanted to? Did you do everything that you wanted to do? And if the answer is no, then you have to think about, like, what are you going to change to do it?
Great, thank you everybody for those insights. So I'm going to stop our recording now. And